It is early November on the Day of the Dead. This popular Mexican holiday is marked with joyful celebration, a way to pay respects to friends and family who are no longer with us. There are traditions, both personal and regional, with the day commemorated in various ways, like this exuberant party at the suburban home of Joy Blanchard in the Midwestern United States.
She was having a great celebration with family and friends.
But this Day of the Dead took on a literal meaning when the host was beaten to death in a crime of passion that rocked this neighborhood to its core.
Upon walking in, you could see Joy laying there with 2 knives out of her head and a staircase spindle laying next to her body.
It was clear that this was someone that knew her. There was obviously a lot of emotion and thought put into this assault.
Hi, I'm Nancy O'Dell. Today's Crime Exposé takes us to Omaha, Nebraska. Joy Blanchard had a big house, a devoted boyfriend, and a love for life. But one shocking day, everything changed.
Joy Blanchard was a happy lady who loved to have parties and have her family over and celebrate events.
For the Day of the Dead on November the 3rd, she threw a raucous party for her friends and family.
Joy was known for having elaborate parties, and she had elaborate decorations, including skulls, headstones, a cemetery theme. She even hired actors to dress up as corpses. And during that evening, she invited a few dozen guests over. They lit candles and shared memories of their deceased loved ones.
The party was a success. After all the guests had cleared out, it was time to clean up. But a busy Joy Blanchard had barely taken a breath before the lights went out.
A few hours later, her boyfriend, Kenneth Langhorst, found her deceased in their home.
Kenneth, horrified by what he had seen, immediately dialed 911.
On that day, police got a call from a party stating that his name was Kenneth and he had just recently arrived home from an over-the-road trucking job. Upon his arrival home, he located his girlfriend, Joy, laying face down in the doorway of their shared home.
When officers from the Omaha Police Department arrived at the house, Kenneth ushered them inside. Captain Colleen Henchy was first on the scene. She examined the body crumpled on the floor.
Joy had 2 knives sticking out of her head, one out of the back and one out of the side. You could clearly see a spindle from the staircase laying next to Joy's body.
The home showed no signs of an intruder break-in. Everything seemed to be in place, except for the 50-year-old woman who had been stabbed and bludgeoned to death.
Joy had been hit so hard with the spindle that part of her scalp was removed, and police could observe that one knife was in the side of her head and the other one directly out of the back.
So was it the blunt force that killed her?
She was deceased due to blunt force trauma from a spindle and 2 knives in her head and neck region.
3 weapons, all easily within reach and easy to use, given the right amount of force. So did you feel that Joy was surprised by her killer? Did he come up from behind her, or did she actually see him in front of her make his move?
It was defensive. It was like Joy had been involved in a struggle. She was clearly fighting for her life kind of thing.
This was an incredibly fast and violent murder.
It was a rage. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, she had a knife from the side of her head and one coming out the back of her head, and then she was scalped. The only thing holding her scalp was a piece of skin hanging here, holding it on it.
The intensity of the assault provided a clue as to who might have killed Joy Blanchard.
So based on the evidence, depending the severity of what you see, it can tell you if the suspect was a stranger or if it's someone you know.
So what did you think? What were your thoughts when you looked things over about the murderer?
It was clear upon initial review that the crime scene was one of passion. The victim suffered from injuries that were subsequent to somebody in a high rage and was definitely not a premeditated or thought out event.
So Joy's killer might have been somebody close to her.
All leads were followed, and the suspect tended to be thought of as somebody that she knew or had known in the past.
This would explain the ferocity of the attack, the savage unleashing of a temper that boiled over into violence.
Joy had fought back, and this was one fight that Joy did not give up easily. Her attacker used great force to take down Joy, and it was clearly a crime of passion.
At this point, there were many possibilities. Whoever killed Joy Blanchard might have been amongst the numerous guests at her party that afternoon, or it could be someone who gained access to the house another way.
The crime scene was processed for any DNA and fingerprint evidence, and everybody who attended the party the night before was interviewed.
Early results for the investigation were not promising.
Interviews and physical evidence would indicate that the suspect was known to the victim, but nothing could be proven at this time.
The murderer could be almost anyone at this point, a friend, a family member. Joy's boyfriend was a reasonable prospect.
Interviews with witnesses at the scene indicated that Joy had issues with her boyfriend, Kenneth. They had been fighting lately over money.
Her boyfriend found her deceased in their home.
Did arguments over money escalate to a physical altercation that ended in murder? To celebrate the Day of the Dead, Joy Blanchard threw a party to end all parties. But her celebration quickly went south after the revelers at her home departed for the day.
So a few hours later, her boyfriend, Kenneth Langhorst, found her deceased in their home.
Someone had arrived at Joy's house, then clocked her with a staircase banister and stabbed her with 2 knives.
Autopsy revealed that Joy had died from 2 stab wounds and blunt force trauma to the head.
Since the police had categorized this murder as a crime of passion, it was time to look at the people closest to Joy. First up, her boyfriend Kenneth, who lived with her. So were they getting along at the time, Joy and her boyfriend?
Police investigations revealed that Kenneth and Joy were having some financial issues and had been arguing over money recently.
So when you confronted Kenneth with that information, how did he respond?
When Kenneth was interviewed regarding Joy's homicide, he stated that he loved Joy deeply and that he would never hurt her, and denied any involvement regarding her homicide.
Of course, this wasn't proof of innocence. Did arguments over money escalate to a physical altercation that ended in murder? Law enforcement continued to dig into the evidence. What else was going on at the house during that time?
Kenneth Langhorst, the boyfriend, stated that due to financial troubles, they allowed Joy's nephew to move in, and he would be a source of income.
The nephew, Charles Zimmer, was 24 and needed a place to bed down at night. He promised to pay rent and chip in for household expenses, and he would mostly be seen and not heard.
They thought he'd be a great tenant. He was quiet, worked a lot, wouldn't be at home frequently.
So it sounded like a win-win for everybody.
Joy thought that this was a way to mitigate everyone's issue by helping Charles out while also helping them out financially. What ended up happening was quite the opposite.
Unfortunately, the quiet, responsible tenant turned into a giant nuisance.
Charles refused to pay his share of rent and contribute to the household expenses.
So since this was Joy's nephew she was allowing to stay there, how did it affect her relationship with her boyfriend?
Kenneth and Joy ended up fighting over the situation more, and it created more of an issue and a financial burden.
Then, a new development that drew the attention of the investigators. Another killer on the loose in the city of Omaha.
During the same time, close to the same neighborhood, there was a series of murders taking place. with a different individual. And due to the way that those murders took place, they were similar in nature to the way that Joy was murdered. So police decided to look into if all those were linked together.
So with all the information you knew about the serial killer's MO, did it seem like he could have been the one who murdered Joy?
The individual responsible for the other murders had made commentary that he enjoyed seeing individuals suffer, and the comments that he made were similar to how Joy was killed. The other suspect lived in the area, and he was a physician who had recently been asked to resign due to his unprofessional behavior.
It was a promising lead, but detectives found little to connect Joy Blanchard's murder to the new suspect. The police investigation had ground to a halt. It could have been the boyfriend, it could have been the nephew, or it could have been somebody unknown to police. There was no evidence or proof that any of these suspects had battered Joy Blanchard to death. After all this, the police were still at square one, and at least one of the suspects insisted that he never could have committed the crime.
When Kenneth was interviewed, he stated that he loved Joy and that he would never hurt her.
After more than a decade, a current case involving a possible serial killer suggested a new way forward. 11 years had passed since Joy Blanchard was bludgeoned and knifed to death in the doorway of her home after hosting a party for friends and family. Joy's boyfriend was a key suspect, but he was adamant that he had nothing to do with her murder.
Kenneth was taken down to police headquarters and interviewed, and he stated that Joy and him had a great relationship and denied any involvement regarding her homicide.
Also in the lineup was Joy's nephew, who was staying in the house temporarily. He proved to be a terrible tenant and was probably very angry at his aunt.
Before the party, Joy had asked her nephew, Charles Simmer, to move out due to failing to pay for some of the household expenses and how he behaved as a tenant.
When questioned by investigators about his aunt's murder, Charles pushed a simple alibi. He couldn't have been there.
Charles Simmer was interviewed regarding his aunt's homicide, and Charles stated that he was at work at the time of his aunt's murder.
So who killed this cheerful, middle-aged woman? Someone who had no obvious enemies. The police department in Omaha, Nebraska were unable to single out anyone, and the evidence trail had turned cold. Finally, after being stymied for more than a decade, the case of Joy Blanchard's murder was reignited. A current case involving a possible serial killer suggested a new way forward.
The Omaha Police Department were investigating a series of stabbing homicides. In relation to that investigation, cold case detectives re-investigated Joy's cold case and re-examined her DNA evidence.
So what changed during all those years that actually helped you in the case?
During that time frame, DNA technologies were able to identify more proteins associated with Joy's case.
In the case of Joy Blanchard, the killer left skin cells and therefore DNA on the knives and staircase spindle that he used to execute her. The new DNA test revealed that the person who had murdered Joy Blanchard was quite close to home. In fact, the killer had been in the house the whole time.
Because of the advancement in DNA, they're able to look at the weapons used on Joy, and they find that the DNA on the weapons was linked to her nephew, Charles Simmer.
The nephew, quiet as a church mouse, busy at his job, and the last person you would expect to beat someone into submission, was finally exposed as Joy Blanchard's assassin.
Charles Simmer's DNA was located on the knife handle and the spindle that was used to attack Joy.
So Charles hadn't been honest with you at the beginning of this case a decade earlier, but now DNA testing had improved so much that you were able to tag him as the killer.
Right, because I think what ended up happening is they had it as a family member, but they didn't have enough to determine which family member.
So then you needed to swab Charles for a new DNA sample. Was he cooperative with that?
Police attempted to obtain a DNA sample from Charles. He clenched his mouth and refused to open it.
But you had a warrant to obtain the sample. So what'd you have to do?
Police were forced to take the sample against Charles' will after putting up somewhat of a fight in the police interrogation room.
When all was said and done, investigators had what they needed: DNA to send to the lab, and soon thereafter, a way to verify the identity of the killer.
After they finally received the DNA sample, they found that Charles Zimmer's DNA matched the DNA on the weapons used on Joy.
But there was still a piece missing from this grisly puzzle. What set off Charles so badly that he suddenly mutated into a violent criminal who would slaughter a family member?
Further investigation revealed that Joy had asked Charles the night of her party to move out. Charles had become a bigger issue than Joy wanted to deal with.
He was definitely not holding up his end of the bargain with Joy.
He had become a point of confrontation between her and her boyfriend Kenneth, and he was not contributing to any household finances or paying his fair share of his rent.
So this heated conversation infuriated Charles so badly that he took action.
He ended up murdering his family member, his Aunt Joy, due to anger from being asked to move out.
Charles was upset over Joy asking him to move out the night before. Charles became enraged after the party and assaulted his aunt with the spindle and attacked her with the knives from her own home.
A completely overamped reaction to a simple request. But Charles Zimmer had problems that ran deeper than anyone ever knew. In the end, the madness he carried within him spilled over, and this mild-mannered young man transformed into a frenzied killer. So why did Charles Zimmer snap that day? What caused him to seize 2 knives and tear apart a staircase in order to mutilate a family member? We may never know the exact answer, but we do know one thing: his story is at an end. He will never brutalize another human being.
Charles was arrested and charged with his aunt's murder and is now convicted of first-degree murder and will spend the rest of his life in jail.
For Joy Blanchard, a generous act of the heart was acknowledged with a violent, sick form of gratitude. It's an unfortunate fact about life that sometimes our best intentions can lead to disastrous results. And now, it's time for today's Safety Spotlight. The case of Joy Blanchard proves that danger can sometimes come from those we least expect, including those close to us. If you are a landlord or inviting someone, even a family member, to live in your home, there are some steps that you can take to help safeguard your financial and physical safety. Check their eviction and credit history to ensure they're financially stable. Find a professional to run a background check, and look for criminal records, a history of violence, or any other potential red flags. Trust your instincts and avoid renting to or sharing your home with anyone who makes you feel uncomfortable. Ensuring safety and financial security is crucial when renting to someone or inviting them into your home. I'm Nancy O'Dell. For everybody here at Crime Exposé, please join us next time and stay safe.